Can y'all see
I will.
what screen do
Yeah.
y'all see?
Black Bass PowerPoint.
All right, perfect. Perfect. All right, so yeah, I just wanted to catch reached out to me to see if I could do catch reached out to me to see if I could do a presentation on the black basses, which is something I've done in the past for the Red Stick group. Um, and it basically, this all the interest in this kind of stems back to it all kind of ties back to, and I don't know if y'all can still see my screen or if it's just the presentation, but
No, we can see a thumbnail of you up there.
this book, which is it's illustrated by Tom O'Leary, but it was Dr. Banky's book on trout and salmon was like the first thing that really interested me in different species. And it's funny because it's trout, and I grew up in the South, and we only have, well, in Georgia, we had three species, but only one was native. But I was an online, I was a forum rat, and I used to see people's trips everywhere, and I always wanted to go take those trips for trout. And eventually, I got old enough and made enough money that I could actually do those trips. They're still, I do them cheap, still, still take them when I can. But I've been to, Wyoming and Idaho and Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, fishing for cutthroat and other native trout species. And, when COVID hit, everything was kind of, brought back home. And that's when sunfish species kind of piqued my interest and and I guess I was interested in black bass before that, because I think it was I did the cut slam and the Wyoming cut slam and did Utah's, and then I was kind of like, well, man, we should be able to do that close to home, and sure enough, there were the bass species, and my buddy Matt Lewis, who came out with a book about red eye bass fishing, um, kind of motivated me to go do the red eye bass slam. And so then it was kind of like, all right, well, now I gotta, look into catching all these fish. Um, but there are 14 accepted black bass species currently. In 2022, there was an article put out by Damon Kim, Andrew Taylor, and another researcher, I forget his name, and it expanded on that list and suggested that there was enough data out there to support 19 species. And we'll walk through those species because the five others aren't accepted yet, but I feel like it's only a matter of time. And the list is here, and I can share this PowerPoint with y'all after, so you have all this information. But basically, of the 19 species, they're broken down into four major species complexes: uh, largemouth, smallmouth, spotted, and red eye, with the addition of shoal bass and swanee bass kind of on their own. And the five that aren't, recognized yet are the Choctaw, which is a species found in Florida and Alabama, the Altamaha, which is one of the red eye bass species, and the Bartrams, which is another red eye bass species. They're in Georgia. Bartrams you can find in South Carolina as well, and maybe a little sliver of North Carolina. And then in terms of smallmouth, these are the most recent. The little river bass is the most recently described species, which was in that 2022 paper. And then Watchtaw bass, and they actually thought the Watchtaw bass and the little river bass were one, and that was as of 2021, and then they split those apart. And so largemouth bass in that research paper, they actually renamed the scientific name they took because the original scientific name, what they had figured out was that it was actually intended for the Florida bass, and not the northern largemouth. And so they used an older name, and this is all Latin. Listen, I'm not a biologist, so I don't get too far into the Latin nitty-gritty. But they basically renamed the Latin name for largemouth bass and Florida bass to coincide with what the original species they kind of described was based off of. And I mean, I think the differences physically are not enough on either species that the naked eye could really tell. I think if you had them both hand in hand next to each other, you might be able to see some subtle differences. But honestly, when it comes to these two, like I couldn't tell you what lakes, what I'm catching out of a water body in Louisiana, whether it's a Florida bass or a northern largemouth, and I don't think anyone else could either, not without genetics. But that's the species we have in Louisiana is the northern largemouth bass. They're native here, and you can find them all throughout the state. But because we've stocked so many Florida bass all over the state, and I say we as in wildlife fisheries or any other agency that has property and lakes to stock, they typically have stocked some strain of Florida bass, because that's what they always thought they needed to do. That's what they thought anglers wanted, and that's what they thought they want big fish, right? And Florida bass grow bigger than northern largemouth. Now they're harder to catch. They don't eat, they're not as aggressive as a northern largemouth. But so you'd be hard pressed to find a native, like a pure strain northern largemouth, uh, unless you find a water body that hasn't been stocked. And in order to do that, I think you'd have to go to a creek, or some small body of water that the state has not touched. But again, unless you're doing genetics, there's no way to tell. And that's but I think we all know what a largemouth bass looks like. I have Florida bass here. I have northern largemouth and landslide. I have no idea if these fish that I caught were either, because these all came from Louisiana. More or less just pictures. But Florida bass are native to Peninsula Florida. I haven't made it, not since I was a kid at least, to catch, like a pure Florida bass. I haven't made it that far into Florida to go target them. But again, at least with these bass, if you wanted to go target a pure, strain Florida bass, if you go to the Florida and you go south of, the Suwannee and the St. Mary's River watersheds, you're likely to run into them. Nobody's stocking northern largemouth in Florida, right? So at least there, you don't have to worry about admixed populations, genetics that are different. But that's the two largemouth. Smallmouth is probably the most dynamic right now, as it's changed the most, recently. In the blue, you have the northern smallmouth bass, which is basically, everywhere that's not Arkansas. The Ozarks or the Ouachitas has northern smallmouth. And then when you get into the Ouachitas and the Ozarks, you start to get some diversity. And I wanted to, show this graph, and all of these graphs are from that research paper, that 2022 paper. And you can download the PDF online. I have a link at the end of the PowerPoint. It's actually one that's not hidden behind a student paywall. You can actually download and read it. But I think the genetic graphs are pretty interesting on where they split apart and what species are closely related to what other species. Um, but you got your yellow is your neosho, your red down here is your little river bass, and then your green would be your watchtail bass. So northern smallmouth, the closest place we could target them would be northern Arkansas. As long as you're not in, the western Ozarks, if you're in that northeastern section of Arkansas, then you're in northern smallmouth territory. I want to say, I feel like, well, I'd be lying. I don't really know. Somewhere north of the Buffalo River, I feel like is northern smallmouth territory. Um, but northern Alabama has them too. This one on the right is actually from the Flint River in Alabama, which there's a few different rivers that run into the Tennessee River. Most of them come from the north. The Flint River is one of them just outside of Huntsville. I used to live in Huntsville, Alabama for a year. It has smallmouth. There's other ones to the west, like Cypress Creek. Some good floats over there. Those are around Muscle Shoals area, I believe. They have smallmouth as well. The fish on the left's from West Virginia, like Bluestone River, I think, out in West Virginia. When you go on work trips, sometimes you find time to go catch fish, and that was one of those times. The Neosho is one you got to be in the that one part of the Ozarks to catch them. The notable watersheds include the Neosho to Illinois, Spring, Mulberry, and the Barren Fork. There's lots of access because of the national forest up there, the Ozark National Forest. Um, but you can catch them in Oklahoma, Arkansas, Kansas, and Missouri. You just got to know what rivers, they're found in. And there's enough, documentation out there that shows you where you need to go to catch them. If you Google neosho bass and research, and you'll figure it out. But my friend Blake and I, we took a trip and did kind of like an Arkansas like smallmouth trip a few years back, and at the time they didn't have the little river bass uh, described, because this was before 2022. Uh, but that was what we ended up catching. We ended up not catching the Washita. So I have pictures from Brian Roberts, who y'all might know. He's our president, but these pictures are from him. The Wachita is native to the upper Wachita. So your tributary rivers for the Wachita include the Caddo, the Little Missouri, which y'all have probably fished a ton, and the Saline. Again, the Wachita National Forest provides good access. It's basically those southern draining rivers on the southeast part of the Wachita Mountains that have Wachita bass. And again, like with the smallmouth bass, kind of like with the largemouth, I really couldn't tell you what physically stands out, what makes each different. I think the most important thing is to just make sure you're in the right watershed. Uh, I know that with some of these watersheds that there's been stocked northern smallmouth in them. Like if you were participating in the red stick jambalaya challenge, I wouldn't, give you a hard time if you turned in a smallmouth from, the Caddo or the Little Missouri. We're not doing genetics to figure out what fishes would, but if you're in the right watershed and it looks like a smallmouth, it's gonna be, the Wachita bass. And then the Little River bass is the one on the western side, southwestern side of the Wachitas. They're the newest described species of smallmouth. The tributaries for that one include the Glover, which is in Oklahoma, the Upper Mountain Fork, and the Cosito or Cosita. I don't know how you pronounce that. Uh, this is actually I don't know where Brian fished here. I feel like these were tributaries to the Caddo. for the Ouachita. This one on the left for the Neosho, that's the Mulberry Fork. I'm going back. I'm not meaning to not divulge where I was, just I forgot. The Little River, this was actually the upper Cosato and Brushy Creek area. So that's the Ouachita National Forest. There's really good access there, and the fishing's, fantastic. There's lots of long ear there too. You'll catch smallmouth and long ear.
Yeah, we got a lot of that.
Is that a question?
We caught a lot of long ear there.
Yeah. Oh yeah. There's lots of long ear there. And I guess that's a whole nother topic for a whole nother day, is whether it was what, a Ozark long ear or the long ear are even, separated in their own species. Uh, the spotted bass complex. So this is, Louisiana gets to experience the one different fish we have is the spotted bass. But these fish are part of that complex. That's the green would be the Alabama bass. The red would be the Choctaw bass. Your blue is your just standard old Kentucky spotted bass. That's what you're going to run into here. And then to the west, Guadalupe bass. So those are all in the spotted bass complex. If you need to know how to tell them apart from largemouth bass, the one thing that I usually look for are these ventrolateral stripes beneath the lateral line. So you have that big, thick black lateral line on all black basses, right? Sometimes it's depending on the species, sometimes it's broken up blotches, but with largemouth and spots, it's typically a line. So it is a little splotchy on a spotted bass, but that to me doesn't tell me much. What tells me much is these little stripes below it that are very consistent. You don't see that on a largemouth. And yeah, you can look at the top fins and see how the shape's different. And there's a notch for the largemouth and not really for the spot. And even with the jaw, I don't trust the jaw because a lot of people turn in like juvenile bass. Juvenile largemouth don't have that jaw that extends past that eye. And nobody really shows me the tooth patch, right? A tooth patch is a dead giveaway for a spotted bass. But the big thing for me are these stripes under the lateral line. That's what I really look for. And then the other giveaway is if you're in the places where they're typically found, which is going to be those sandy, rocky rivers that we have, especially on the north shore of Lake Pontchartrain, in the Florida parishes. You're talking about the Amite, the Tangipahoa, the Tickfaw, the Bogachita, the Comite, the Pearl, the Pushpatapa, like they all have spotted bass. Out west, you got the Calcasieu watershed is full of them, spotted bass. Kisatchie National Forest has spotted bass. I wish I could tell you that these were not spotted bass. They were something different. They were something cooler than that. They were, broken out, but there's enough research to suggest that the evolutionary, you know, evolutionarily, they haven't had enough time to do that. They need far more time. The Mississippi River has been connected to these waterways and too soon geologically for it to actually split out to a different species. So they're all just spotted bass. The closest thing we have is to the west would be Guadalupe bass, which is, I don't know if y'all have ever taken a trip to the Edwards Plateau, but over there in Texas, the hill country, that's a lot of fun. This was the South, I don't know, Llano. I guess that's how you pronounce it. I don't know. If it's Spanish, it's Llano. Yeah, I don't know. Not really good at my Spanglish. But what's cool is this river actually had Rio Grande cichlids in it too, like native, which was kind of neat to see. But again, they look like spotted bass. Maybe maybe a little like a smallmouth kind of, not necessarily. It's more like smallmouth coloration, but not with the spot the big blotches, almost like spotted bass patterning. And this was just one river. I hadn't, fished a ton for them. But you can find them in the upper portion of the Guadalupe, the San Antonio, the Colorado, the Brazos. They're in the Nueces as well, where they've been introduced. And y'all, I'm probably going to butcher all these names because all over the place. I haven't been spent a whole lot of time in Texas, but the long ears over there look amazing too. I think they probably have their own species of long ear over there. Choctaw bass, that's over in southern Alabama, western Florida. You're gonna want to be in the Florida Panhandle. If you go on like a beach trip, take a day, go wade one of these rivers, that runs in the Choctawhatchee Bay. The Perdido, Escambia, Blackwater Yellow, Choctawatch, like these are really fun rivers to wade. Again, it's hard I don't know, you know, I can't really describe the difference in how these look compared to a spotted bass or a Guadalupe, um, or an Alabama bass. But if you're in the right watershed, that's what's going to be there. You're not going to find those two species like you're not going to find Kentuckies with Choctaws or, Guadalupes with Kentuckies, or you might sometimes run into places where there's Alabamas and Kentuckies just because Alabamas have been spread around. But it's like one I would say is a Chattahoochee River, you might run into that. But this was, I don't remember if it's Coldwater Creek or another one in the over there in the Blackwater. There's like a Blackwater River State Forest over there that has plenty of access. Um, but Choctaw bass are pretty cool. I mean, they fish a lot like our spotted bass. If y'all have ever fished for spotted bass, it's poppers next to structure. If you get it as close to the bank in a deep spot as possible, they usually come out and attack it. Alabama bass are the biggest of the spotted bass. They get pretty large, and they've been moved around quite a bit by folks. I think you can find them now in North Carolina and Tennessee. This is what drives fisheries biologists nuts. But we've fished for them in their native range, and that one on the bottom left was pretty awesome. That Blake caught. Top right, let's see, that's one out of the Cahaba or a Cahaba tributary. So that would be on the right side is the Cahaba tributaries. On the left side is Tallapoosa tributaries. That was during our red eye bass hunt is when we ran into Alabama bass. Again, they're big. They're fun. Like they'll surprise you, especially when you're fishing for red eyes. Red eyes are tiny compared to these guys. But yeah, you can look for them in any of those main Mobile Basin waterways, the Black Warrior, the Cahaba, the Coosa, Tallapoosa. If you're looking for red eye bass, you'll likely run into them. And that segues pretty good with the red eye bass complex. I think there's seven. Yeah, seven species in the red eye bass complex. Two of them aren't officially recognized yet, the Altamaha and the Bartrams, but I'm sure they will soon enough. And again, it's basically watershed driven is where they live. There's subtle differences with what they look like, which we can kind of go over, but I'm a big time, just make sure you're in the right watershed, catch the fish that looks like it. That's what you got, right? I would focus on that as opposed to trying to figure out like, is this one species or the other? again, the Cahaba bass, and these are all named after the watersheds they're found in. So there's no secret. Cahaba bass is native to the Cahaba River system. In fact, the watershed here is actually it's pretty small because the Cahaba itself doesn't really drain a ton of land. Uh, it runs right through Birmingham. So if you're in the Birmingham area, working or something, you can go, you know, jet over to Shades Creek or the Little Cahaba and go catch one pretty easy. Um, but that you'll want to probably be on a tributary stream to target them. There's not as many found main stem anymore. The one river out of all these red eye bass, the one river that the main stem you could find a bunch of these red eyes in is the Tallapoosa. If you do a float trip on the Tallapoosa, you'll probably run into a Tallapoosa bass. But a lot of these other red eyes, they kind of been relegated to tributary streams. And a lot of this red eye bass fishing is just like trout fishing. And I mean, you're fishing these small rocky streams that you'd be hard pressed to, if it wasn't Alabama, you'd think it was a trout stream, right? And if it wasn't, like 100 degrees in the south, like it always is. Uh, but they're relatively easy wades. You have some slick bottom, so wear felt. Um, don't listen to anyone that tells you that rubber's better. Rubber with studs is just as good as felt. They're lying to you. Felt is the way to go. Just wash your boots in between watersheds. Um, but that's Cahaba lily. They're like in the top left. They're known for their lilies. That was one red eye I caught, which was a larger one, in the bottom left. And then you're looking at the main stem Cahaba bottom right, and then that's a tributary on the National Wildlife Refuge in the top right. I want to say Caffey Creek was the creek that we fished. But good access on the refuge there. The Coosa bass, uh, just like this is like the Coosa bass is the red eye bass. Like the original red eye bass was named because of this Coosa bass. This was the type species. They're out of the Coosa River system, which you can find these in Alabama, Georgia, and Tennessee. Oh yeah, Little River Canyon, great place to go for them. There's rivers in the Talladega, or creeks in the Talladega National Forest that have them for sure. Chattahoochee National Forest for sure, like the Conasauga up in northwestern Georgia, southern Tennessee. Talladega National Forest, Talladega Creek itself has them. Cheehaw Creek, that's where we fish. That's the pictures you see here. The creek is Cheehaw. Just beautiful water. And this is coming at the tallest point in Alabama is Mount Cheehaw. These streams run off of that. Just you see the fly in the bottom right. So a lot of people push poppers for these fish. We had really good luck fishing subsurface. That's a stonefly pattern. That's a rubber legs, past rubber legs. But crawfish patterns, stonefly patterns, just big nymphs, big buggy nymphs work really well. A lot of fun fishing these places. This stream had good access. There's a trail that runs alongside of it. Tallapoosa bass is probably, I don't know, I thought it might be the prettiest. It's got more blues than some of these other ones, and the scales just pop, like really, really bright scales on it. They all have this blue eyeshadow. All the red eye bass have the blue eyeshadow, and I don't know if you can really tell in any of these other pictures I have. They have like kind of white fringe fins, which I don't know if any of these really show it too well. Maybe a little bit here. Um, red eyes are beautiful. They're probably the prettiest bass. Um, but this one you can find in the main stem of the Tallapoosa, but also the tributary streams. Horseshoe Bend is a good place to go float for them. Uh, I'm drawing a blank on the stream that we fished. It was a big tributary though, and it was right outside of like Alexander City. And just stop. It was one of those stop at a bridge places and walk underneath and go fish the shoals. See, they have shoals there. We don't have shoals in Louisiana. These shoal complexes hold these red-eye bass. We don't have enough elevation to have shoals. I think I found one shoal once in a creek, and it blew my mind in Louisiana. You can see the rig we were fishing in the bottom left, kind of. That's a big chubby Chernobyl and stonefly, underneath. That's a Western trout, rig, but damn if it doesn't work for red eyes. Warrior bass. These are this is the bass you'll find in the Black Warrior system, the red eyes. So tributary streams to the Black Warrior, like the Locust Fork, the Mulberry Fork, the Sipsey Fork. This upper left and the bottom left was in the Bankhead National Forest. The Bankhead National Forest is awesome. Beautiful place. They have streams all through it, and they're all, I won't say full of warrior bass, but that's where you'll most likely find them. That's like the highest populations that have warrior bass. The highest population streams with warrior bass are in the Bankhead. I wouldn't fish the one we fished though. We only ran into that. That one red eye I caught is the only one we found. In a few hours worth of fishing. We actually had an emergency backup plan. That's the other red eye we caught is the one on the bottom right. And thankfully Blake caught it because he needed one. That's Turkey Creek, which is a nature preserve. Good access there. Don't go on a weekend because it's like a swimming hole. If you do go on the weekend, be there. Well, I can't say super early because it has a gate. Like they have to open the gate for you. So like I would stick to the Bankhead if you go, hunt for these fish. Just find a tributary stream to the Sipsey. There's a bunch of them, and fish those. The Sipsey itself, the upper Sipsey. This is the upper Sipsey above Lake Martin Lake. Below the lake, it's a tail race and it has rainbow trout. Uh, Above the lake has the native fish species and is far prettier than below the lake. Like don't go to Alabama and fish for trout. That's just ridiculous. Plus the trout there are super hard for some reason. They're really technical. I don't know why they fish like that. There's a nice fly shop right by the tail race there, and those folks can help you out. Um, I don't know, I'm drawing a blank on the name of that one. Chattahoochee bass. So now we're moving from west to east, getting out of Alabama into Georgia. Even though this runs along the border in the southern part of the state, the Chattahoochee River, most of the Chattahoochee bass or all the Chattahoochee bass, you got to be in Georgia to find. These were out of Snake Creek, which is a tributary to the Chattahoochee, south of Atlanta, actually. You don't see too many left south of Atlanta, but this tributary has them. More are come out of the north, like near Helen and the kind of the foothills of the Appalachians is where you'll find more Chattahoochee bass. You won't see them in the main stem. They're not there anymore. The main stem Chattahoochee has, I think, it's a weird jumble of introductions of non-native bass. They have smallmouth. The shoal bass was native to it. They still have those in places. But you have largemouth, you have Alabama bass, you have smallmouth. Like it's gonna end up being this weird, mutt bass at some point is what you'll catch there. So, hopefully some of these tributary streams hold out, their genetics. But what you'll notice with this red eye is the red tip fins are very obvious. That really lets you know you got a Chattahoochee bass. They're kind of flame red. They're pretty cool. And again, that's a crawfish pattern. Altamaha bass. Um, Thankfully, we didn't have too hard a time catching these. Some people have said these give, folks a hard time to find. I want to say this was the Appalachia River. Um, Again, native to the Altamaha River system in Georgia. So tributaries like the Oconee, the Ocmulgee, the Ogeechee rivers, and you're not going to find like main stem Ogeechee's too far south, but tributaries. Uh, there is national forest access, Oconee National Forest. There's access around, not quite to Athens, Georgia, just before you get to Athens. Um, but these didn't have the red, flame red. They're kind of a little orange on the fins. I don't know if you can see that. Um, not necessarily like the prettiest red-eye bass. The river was fun though, lots of rocks. And that was this picture on the top left. We were actually standing on an old train trestle, which was kind of cool. And you could just see the stacked shoal below. I mean, really, with these red eyes, is kind of like shoal bass. Like if you look on a map or Google Earth and find a shoal complex that's near a bridge, that's probably what you want to target. Bartram's bass. This one was actually pretty easy for us because they're found in a state park over there in Georgia. But it's in the Savannah River system, which runs along the border of Georgia, South Carolina. So you can find them in South Carolina in the National Forest there. Um, but you can, yeah, and these you can catch in the main stem in Augusta, but I mean, watch out. Those are probably hybridized because they have smallmouth that are introduced over there too. But tributary streams like the Chattooga, I think that's in South Carolina. The Chattooga and the Broad and its forks, which is, I guess there's a Broad River in both states, but I know the Broad in Georgia has them. Chattahoochee National Forest definitely has access. These came from a state park in Georgia. Again, sorry, I'm blanking on the name. It was some kind of covered bridge, state park. And if anyone really needs it, I can let you know. But it is really pretty piece of water, and there was a cool covered bridge there, and below these were all below a dam, like a little dam. Um, you're pretty easy fishing right there. We camped, right within walking distance, so that was pretty cool. And then that gets us to the last two, which is the shoal and the Swanee bass. Um, and you can kind of see the spotted bass complex on the left with the shoal bass and the Swanee bass. So it's basically watersheds, right, going from west to east, and then the shoal would be the Chattahoochee, and then the Swanee, Chattahoochee Flint, and then the Swanee would be the Swanee River system, really. But shoal bass, I've caught shoal bass in Florida and Georgia, which is kind of cool. You can still catch them in Florida. They're native to the Chattahoochee Apalachicola River system. On the right, you have this one came from the Chipola River in Florida. Bottom right is the Chipola River, and that's where I caught the shoal bass. It was this big rock bluff, and they were right on the ledge. I mean, I don't. I think I was fishing that same crawfish pattern. Blake's tied this one crawfish pattern, and I probably only have like a half dozen of them, and they're all beat up now, and I still fish them, and they still catch. Um, Crawfish patterns are great for bass in other places. I don't tend to have luck with them here in Louisiana, but in rivers with rocks, like, I don't know, they tend to work well. You just got to watch getting them hung up on lumber and timber. That's why I don't fish them a whole lot in Louisiana. We got too much timber. Um, but these fish are found the Flint in Georgia, the Chattahoochee, Chipola in Florida, and gosh, access in Georgia. I know Spreewell Bluff State Park is a good place to go fish for them in Georgia. The Flint River has access. There's you can even find lots of guides that take you out on the Flint River to catch shoal bass. Shoal bass are cool. I mean, they get like to 8 pounds in rivers, and they're fish that fight, harder or as hard as a smallmouth. Like this is probably the most underrated, river fish we have in the South. They're fantastic, and they are in the whitewater. So just like trout would hold in, current, they hold in current. And they are um what's the word? They run up the river from, not to the coast, but they're migratory. Like they'll move, so they go to the shoal complexes to spawn, and then they'll move out and spread out throughout the system when they're not spawning. So I mean, if you go to target them during the spawn and you go to those shoal complexes, you can just, catch them, load up on them. That's when people really go target them and catch really big ones. Um, the Chipola was a weird experience. Like, so the upper left over here is Chattahoochee in Georgia, and that's where that bottom left picture is from. And that's so the upper Chattahoochee, like above Atlanta, this is more toward Dahlonega, not necessarily to Dahlonega, but south of that, like almost where the Chestatee runs into the Chattahoochee. Uh, Again, you're fishing the shoal, like you're trying to find the whitewater and then fish around it. Chipola was one of those situations where there wasn't a whitewater. I mean, there's current, there's lots of current, there's water moving, but I didn't know where to target, and I had a hell of a time trying to find them until I started fishing these just bluff walls, and that's when I caught a few. Um, so I don't know, maybe there were rocks underneath, shoals underneath. I have no idea, but Chipola is a really interesting river. It was a really cool float, but you couldn't wade it. Like it was too deep to wade. So you got to get in a kayak to fish the Chipola. And I don't know that they have tributaries to it where they're found, like in Florida. Like I'm pretty sure it's only that river itself. And I think even with shoal bass in Georgia, they're they're more of a big river fish. I don't know. They're in tributaries as well, but not during the spawn. Like they go to these shoal complexes to spawn, and those are typically found in these big rivers or bigger creeks. Swanee bass. This is another one I haven't caught. This is the one that I want to catch next. I keep. I think I've had 2 trips scheduled to Florida to go fish for them. One, there was a giant hurricane last year that had me reschedule. And then 2, I ended up buying a house this year, and that had me reschedule a new house, new priorities. But these are pictures from my friend, Dr. Lewis. He went this year and he fished. This is from the Santa Fe River, which is maybe like around Ocala, Gainesville area. But Swanee bass are native to Georgia and Florida, the Suwannee and Ocklawakanee river systems. Um, you can also find them in the Wasissa and the Waukulla and St. Mark's rivers. Those are all spring-fed rivers that are south of Tallahassee. They're actually not native to these rivers, but they found their way into there probably by bucket biologists, and they're doing well. Um, Really, the places that they're native to are tributaries to the Suwannee in Florida, like the Withlacoochee and the Alapaha, I want to say is the name of it. I'd have to double check on that. So this is a fish that, like, as much as I like to fish crawfish patterns, this is the one you fish crawfish patterns for. Their diet is basically crawfish. Apparently that's their preferred forage for sure, like by far. Beautiful fish. I mean, they have huge, barring on the side, black barring on the side, and they're short, round-bodied little footballs. I'll go fish for them one day. If anyone wants to make a trip, just let me know, and I'm the first person that is going to say yes. Um, and then that kind of brings us to what does the future hold? And this is, just something to think about and something that, people are still doing research on these. These things are changing. Seems like every year these days, people are doing more genetic research and figuring out different stuff. The Delta bass is one that was proposed back in 2021. There was a paper that came out that suggested there was enough evidence that a third largemouth bass existed in the Mobile Tensaw Basin, um, which would be, west of the Florida bass. The 22 paper that I basically used all the graphics from and touched on the most because that's the most recent data. It only mentions them as a proposed species and basically lumps them in as one of the three different groups of largemouth bass. So that tells me they didn't find enough in their research to elevate them to a species. Merely they suggested, yeah, this is a type of largemouth. This is a largemouth, sure. It's it's one of, it's too close genetically, I guess, to lump out. But the bass itself, like the largemouth and the Florida bass, apparently they each have their own groups, and where certain watersheds are closer in relation to other watersheds. But yeah, I just thought it was interesting, something to throw out there. And these things are ongoing, research is ongoing. But that's it. Here's the resources I've got. Most of this came from this research paper. This is the other largemouth research paper that mentions the Delta bass. I've got range maps on my website and examples like ID examples of really any fish that I've caught. Um, Obviously, the FFI, we do our sun catch program through the Gulf Coast Council, but FFI as a whole has a bass catch program, which is kind of interesting. They give awards at, I think, 4 species, 8 species, and 12 species, I want to say. I have two of the levels. I don't have the third level. And then Georgia has a bass slam. So Blake and I, that's when we did the red eye bass slam, I was able to get the Georgia bass slam while doing it. Haven't been to South Carolina to do their bass slam, but maybe in the future. But yeah, any questions? I mean, that was a lot of me just talking.
I think we fished with Dwayne Hayden, some of his guides this week this last weekend, got back yesterday in Arkansas, smallmouth. And he mentioned there were actually smallmouth as far south as Millwood Lake in Arkansas, which is just north of Texarkana, 15 or 20 miles north of Texarkana. Little River feeds into it. And but everything we caught were Washita strain. He said there were 4 species or 4 strains. He said strains, but smallmouth in Arkansas. So I guess that would be northern Neosha, Washita, and Little River.
Yeah, you could do a 4 species smallmouth slam in Arkansas now. That would be a lot of fun.
Yep. Any questions for Ben?
And it doesn't have to be about bass. If you want to talk sunfish, we'd talk sunfish.
Yeah, how to fish. He's a fishy guy. I've known him a long time. He can catch. He's like catch. He can catch a fish in a bucket.
So what color crawfish fly do you recommend?
The crawfish pattern, I have a example of it on my website. Again, the Little Looked At Mountains to Marsh website. Let me see. It's something that Blake ties. I don't know the name of it because he probably just stole it from somebody and then kind of made it his own. Let me see if I can pull it up real quick.
Is it
Search
orange
for
or tan or root beer colored or kind of bright crawfish orange?
it's natural looking. I mean, it's tan. It is here. Let's see. All right, y'all can see that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've got the pattern here, the materials. It looks like it was tied by Drawn Lee. It's a variant of his fly. But I'll show you the finished product.
Yeah. So it kind of looks like a cross, but looks like almost like a maze full motion, except with pine squirrel claws, kind of.
Yeah, I mean, I don't tie flies, so I'm totally ignorant as to anyone else's patterns. And Blake pretty much quit tying because he really doesn't fish a whole lot anymore. It's only when we take these trips out west that he goes fishing now. But he's a biologist at wildlife fisheries, so I mean he's around fish all day. Um, but I'll tell you who else's pattern I really like is Darren. Darren's pattern, the guy, he's from Lafayette, right?
Darren Lee, Optimus.
Yeah, he's got a crawfish I like.
Yeah, that's the maze full motion.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a smallmouth pattern from upper Midwest somewhere. I don't know, but yeah, he kind of brought it to all of us here at Red Stick, I think, about 3 years ago or so. Yeah, it's a great pattern. Yeah.
But yeah, if you want to learn this fly, I have the pattern and the instructions are on my website. Just type crawfish fly into the search box and it'll come up. And
So if you don't fish crawfish patterns in Louisiana, what's your top few bass flies in Louisiana other than poppers?
like bass flies in Louisiana,
Yeah, yeah.
it's hard to beat a popper for a spotted bass
Yeah.
here. I mean, and that could be a boogle bug. A boogle bug, well, I say that's pre Chinese boogle bug scandal, right? Because they used to be that you could fish it all day and it wouldn't break on you. And it seems like lately they're crap now. But like a boogle bug, and he or I used to buy those whatever you would get at like I mean almost like the Accardo patterns, but there was some other brand that used to carry them at um Cabela's, like Betts, like those old Betts poppers. But the Accardo ones work great well too, like a Miss Prissy or um but really anything what's the like a Lano bug works well. What's the pattern out of Georgia? See, I'm awful with flies, guys.
The
Like
round one or the round phone piece?
stealth bomber.
Cool.
Stealth bomber works fantastic. But yeah, I don't fish a lot of subsurface for our bass.
It's Saturday. He said it did Saturday.
Stealth bomber Saturday?
The B2 spelling was.
Oh,
That's what Carlton was talking
I
about.
got you. Yeah, you know, the booger bugs, they quit selling the seconds on eBay for like $3 each, and now they're $8.
I got a pile of seconds.
I'm almost out.
It's a
It's Kent's stealth bomber. Kent Edmonds ties a stealth bomber. That's the fly. If you want a top water pattern that dives, this one's fantastic. Not the shrimp, just the regular stealth bomber.
Okay, I know that pattern. I just didn't remember the name.
Yeah. Yeah, it catches everything. He's
I think
got a
Chris
little
has that on his web. I think Chris has that on his website too.
yeah, he might. It's a great fly. The guy who came up with it, I fishes for shoal bass. So
Well, Darren came and talked to us about fishing the upper Calcasieu watershed, and he has a fly, Tulis,
Wiggle bug, but the wiggle bug he does is nowhere on the internet.
Yes, it's always wiggle bug. It's like a Rapala crankbait. Basically, it's foam, but when you retrieve it, it dives and wiggles.
Okay.
Pops back up.
Like a Todd's Wiggle Minnow.
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
But it's got dumbbell eyes on it. You got it.
Well, yeah, if, well, he'd have to stop sharing the screen. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna tie it here in August. I've got one here that Jim's been developing a kind of a prototype of it, and it really is cool in the water. So it should work really well.
It's been swimming pool tested, not creek tested.
All right, anything else for Ben?
No, very informative.
What do you call it, biologist? You say a bucket biologist?
That's the general public. That's when somebody moves a fish, they become a bucket biologist.
Oh,
Don't move fish. That's like the most important thing out of any of these presentations. Even though it seems like it'd be a good idea to move something, even if it's native to that area. If it's not found in a creek, there's a reason it's not found there, or a pond. Like, leave it alone. It's a big problem across the Southeast with people who think, oh, I want to catch these bass, but I don't want to drive, 3 hours. I want to, just catch them in my backyard. And all it's going to lead to is, the loss of diversity for a lot of these species, because they'll just hybridize. I mean, they don't know enough to know to, leave each other's beds alone. So, right.
I hadn't heard the term bucket biologist.
Yeah.
Then you got two of them.
so what about subsurface flies for Louisiana bass?
So you
Clouds are.
Subsurface, I mean, you can't beat a woolly booger. Or any kind of woolly booger like fly, like a crystal bugger, or stuff like that. I like to fish. There's a jig. There's an Orbis has a jig style, um, a jig bugger, I think is what they call it. I fish those a lot. The
Like
problem
a
with
round head jig with big marabou tail on it, kind of, so what? I think.
tungsten jig bugger here, I'll put it on the screen. I fish these things a lot. They work really well. They work really well for a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Just like.
I don't like the black. Get out of here, Orbis. I don't like the black as much, the tan or the olive, for some reason. And I think a lot of it has to do with just seeing the fly. I like to fish a lot of clear water. I like to actually see the fly get eaten. And a lot of these darker patterns, if they don't have like some kind of, bright spot on them, it's hard to see that fly get eaten, because a lot of times these fish, you know, they'll eat it, you won't even feel it. You know,
Yeah.
it'll just go in and out. And that's one thing I found is they don't seem to care if you have a little bright, spot on it, just so you can see it. Um, but this fly, and I know that's a really zoomed in version of it, but
Nice. Well, it looks like a park fly.
yeah. I mean, I like a lot of flies that look like, I like anything that looks buggy, and if it has rubber legs, it's buggy. Anything that has a lot of, like, hair falling off of it, feathers falling off of it, like, that's what I fish a lot of. What I'm starting to fish more of is trying to go away from heavily weighted flies, and more, not necessarily unweighted, but just slower sinking, especially for sunfish. If you're fishing for sunfish, I don't want that weight unless I'm fishing for like shellcracker. If I want to catch shellcracker, I'm gonna put something heavily weighted so it gets down.
Yeah.
But like, I've noticed that, man, the slower these things fall, like these flies, like, man, fish will just eat them up if they're slow. Slow sink. Like those slow sinking spiders and stuff.
Yeah.
But and then I mean, you can throw any number of articulated streamers too for bass. I don't even have patterns for that, because all the names are racy.
Those are your gar patterns coming up.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, anything else for Ben? We'll let him go so he can go eat dinner. So it's, good presentation, really informative. I mean, I had no idea there were that many black bass species out there. Never.
Yeah, hope y'all learned something. And sorry, I mean, look, it's there's a lot to take in. So hope y'all don't mind me, just talking at you for an hour.
No, and Ben is the guy, like, if Jim and I can't identify a sunfish of some kind, Ben's the guy, or Chris, that we send it to. He's more than a bucket biologist.
Yeah.
I'm just I'm just a guy I'm a map nerd, by trade. I'd look at aerial photos all day, every day. But I'm kind of like an amateur naturalist. Like I like anything outdoors I'm into. So lately it's been birds and plants, but fish are also, obviously the I'm most passionate about.
All right, good deal. Well, Ben, thanks a lot, man. We
Thank you.
appreciate it.
No, thank y'all. Y'all have a good one.
You were recorded for posterity on our YouTube channel, so.
Oh, okay. Very good.
All right, man. Thanks a lot.
All right. Appreciate it.